Hey everybody, welcome back to the pod. I want to start today's show by paying tribute to the late and the great Alex Manninger, who sadly passed away yesterday at the age of 48. 48 is no age whatsoever, and I was shocked and saddened to hear of the accident in which he tragically lost his life. Alex was someone that I idolised growing up. He played a massive part in the 97-98 season and was the ultimate professional, supporting and covering for David Symeou when necessary during that campaign. And I remember having an Alex Manninger goalkeeping shirt. That was a shirt that I purchased around that time with some of my birthday money. I'll never forget that. I'll always remember that. I remember being one of the kids that had the Manninger shirt rather than the Symeou shirt. And I was lucky enough to welcome him onto this podcast on 2 or maybe 3 occasions in the past. He was super enthusiastic to jump on, super insightful. And I'd imagine that when you're a pro who's still kind of working within the game and you get a message from someone who's trying to kickstart this podcast that at the time has zero credibility. I mean, you might say it still has zero credibility, but certainly at that point, there was nothing, not really an audience, not really any credibility. And Alex accepted my invitation to come on. He came on again and again, and was always so willing to give up his time, and was just genuinely a really incredible person. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I knew him inside out, but all my interactions with him were fantastic. And I've always said that I'm super grateful for his time. So when I heard this news yesterday, of course, I was deeply saddened by it. And I just want to send my condolences, my heartfelt condolences to all of his friends, family, loved ones. The world has lost a great man. And I suppose at a time in the season where we're so worked up and we're sort of really getting frustrated about things that in the grand scheme of life probably aren't that important, this is kind of a sober reminder, isn't it, of what can happen and what real bad stuff looks and feels like. So rest in peace, Alex Manninger. All the best to his friends and family, sending them the strength they need to get through this really, really difficult time. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, our weekly show with the brilliant Adam Keys. Adam, welcome back to the pod, mate. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm relieved. We're in Champions League semi-final. I think it's a weird sense of kind of sub-optimism in that it's our first time we've ever done this, back-to-back Champions League semi-finals, but everything does feel a bit flat. But at the same time, it also felt like a bit of job done. Let's move on. So I'm hopeful that we come out, find the energy, and go and do the business at the Etihad. What about you?
Yeah, it's a weird space to be in, isn't it? Because I, like you, looked at the game the other night and just thought, job done, we're through. That's all that matters. We've got our issues at the moment. But if I'm being completely honest, I was never too concerned about the sporting game. So much so that I booked my flight to Madrid after Atletico beat Barcelona. So, and I know that, I said that on the pod yesterday that I did that because I was fearful of the prices going absolutely crazy. But I wouldn't have done that if I felt really nervous and really sort of stressed about the sporting game. So I always thought we were going to get through that. I kind of hoped, Adam, for a slightly better performance, attacking performance, just to give us that little bit more optimism going into Sunday's game. I guess that's a good place to start. We didn't really get that, did we? We didn't get the Arsenal performance that sent everybody away thinking, okay, we're back, or we're even on our way to being back. It was kind of, as you said, job done and not much more.
Yeah, I think it was a case of I had 2-0 in my head. We were going to go out, get a couple of goals, see that tie out, and probably put our feet up. But actually, if you look at the last 10, 15 minutes of the game, it was us with a bit more urgency. Arteta throwing the ball on, telling them to go and play. David Raya was the one moving the ball quickly, whereas Sporting, by contrast, just looked like they had no idea how to get through us. And it did seem that we were the ones looking for a goal, which was weird because we were the ones in the lead. Even you look later on when Gabriel Jesus goes round his man, skips past another in the box. that was all at the end of the game. And it felt like there was almost tactical instructions being played out for Sunday. And at times, which is really weird for a Champions League quarterfinal against, in my opinion, a very technically good Sporting side, it was almost like a training ground exercise where you could see different things coming to fruition. We saw the double pivot, really double pivoting with Rice and Zubimendi, and those kind of things really coming into play. The use of Havertz late in the game, one long ball that went straight down to him that he knocked down to Eza for a shot with his left foot, that kind of stuff we haven't seen recently. And it felt like, let's try some new things. But at the same time, it almost felt like we had one gear to go up. In some games, it feels like we've maybe got two or three that we can go up. In this game, it felt like we had one. And in most games at the minute, it feels like there's maybe another gear to go to. Against Bournemouth, we just couldn't find it. And that's the worry at the minute. City, just over the last three games, look like they've got two or three gears. But at the same time, I think people are overlooking City have dropped points in two of their last three league games. We have dropped points in one of our last three. But the volume of cup games has actually swung the narrative. So yeah. So with Sporting, it's a big relief. I think it's one of those where I never thought throughout the game that they were actually going to score. Even when they hit the post, it was kind of like, right, wake up, boys. Let's go and win this. But for me, it was very, very comfortable. And I thought we managed players fairly well. We got players off. We made subs at the right time. So let's wait and see how to Sunday, because it's one thing saying we did the job, we conserved energy, we didn't empty the tank. It's another than saying, go and do the job. You have to go and do the job next.
Absolutely. What have you made, Adam, of Mikel Arteta's demeanor across the last few days? Because I went to his press conference on Tuesday. I thought he was a little bit spiky, a little bit prickly. I came away from it actually sort of with a lot of thoughts. And it's not often that I come back from Colney and go, I think I need to do a bonus pod here to talk about this. Some of the time we do it later in the day because we're hoping for some injury news, which we never, ever really get from Mikel, if we're being honest. But, you know, sometimes I delay the pod for that reason. But this time I sort of came back and I thought, no, I need to speak on this. And I thought his demeanor post-Sporting was quite interesting as well. There's a lot of people of sort of, you know, non-Arsenal persuasion, if you like, who I've spoken to over the last couple of days, who have said he's cracking up. The pressure's getting to him. I'm not sure I would go as far as using the term cracking up, but this is a different Mikel Arteta, isn't it? To the one that we've seen all season, where for the most part, he's tried to project calm and, you know, he's tried to make the point that there's a long way to go. It feels like now it's kind of all or nothing for him, and he's feeling that a little bit. Is that fair?
I think it's a strange one when it comes to press conferences in general, because I think people clip down sound bites and it's lose-lose for managers. Mikel has done some brilliant press conferences this season. They've got no airtime. This one, when he said, I'm on fire, and he was so pointed in everything he said, that to me was a manager that was taking the heat personally and trying to take it off his team. You look at Sam Allardyce's press conference when he took over Leeds for those 4 games. He went in and took all the energy away from the team and tried to pin it all on himself. It obviously didn't work, but it did distract everyone from the team for those games. We've seen Jurgen Klopp do this. We've seen Pep do it plenty of times over the years. And throughout the season, we've seen Pep be described as being unhinged and losing it and all these other things. And actually, these guys they're not trying to motivate the fans. They're not trying to speak to the media. Really, what they're trying to do is find ways to motivate their own team. And I think that's the bit that we overlook. So for me, I watched the full press conference, and there were a few moments in it where I thought he's quite spiky there, but it felt deliberate. But if you look at his calmness and at other points throughout it, it wasn't like you had 15 minutes of fire and fury. It was points where it felt like they were crafted, they were narrated, and he came in thinking, I need to bring this energy. After the game, I quite liked that he spoke out the way that he did, in that This isn't normal for Arsenal. Yes, we are a big club, but the reality is Arsenal are a club that have massively underachieved in European competition throughout the club's history, and we have been away from the title race for a long, long time. If you look at the gap of 22 years, you look at the number of years that we weren't even close to a title. We've now had, this is our third actual title race. I don't count last season as a title race. It was over too early. As he said, we will take this stuff for granted. He said that we're going to win the biggest trophies. I do believe him in that. But at the same time, I think everything is going to be clipped up as a negative. The media have a real agenda against Arteta. That's very, very clear. You see mainstream publications attacking him. And I think the only way you can get past that is by winning something big. That's the only way. And I think a lot of stuff will change. A lot of the approach towards him will change if he has a medal in his pocket, because Pep can say whatever he wants. No one will challenge him because of the medals he's had. Klopp was the same. He had medals in his pocket. Arteta sadly doesn't.
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's disrespect towards him. I think he gets pulled up for things that, as you say, people wouldn't even dare question when it comes to some of the other managers. And I think, look, a good comparison to a degree, and I think that Mikel Arteta has earned way more respect, by the way, than this particular person, but that would be Rafinha, because Rafinha at Chelsea is obviously someone who is using all these innovative methods, saying all these kind of what are perceived to be wacky things, and people are coming at him, but they're coming at him because really, truly, deep down, they don't believe that he's a Chelsea manager. The perception of what Chelsea is based on the last 2-3 decades, is a club that are going to be at the top of the game, are going to be challenging for the major trophies. And in comes this rookie manager. And Mikel Arteta had that disrespect, I think, when he first came in. But for whatever reason, even though Arsenal have clearly progressed, and he's clearly one of the most sought-after coaches in world football, that disrespect continues. And it will continue, as you say, rightly so, until he wins silverware. I think I don't really think that it was. This is just my opinion, as calculated, as you say, in terms of how he sort of came into the room. I've been in a lot of those press conferences, and I think you can see when Mikel is a little bit on edge, and you can see it in his eyes. There's a very different look. There's a very different sort of demeanor about him. And I think I think what he actually did was do quite well to tone down some of it, because I think if he wasn't in control, it could have spiraled into something much more. But I think he legitimately felt all those things he said. I take your point that it's probably to take some of the heat off the players. I think that's probably one of the overarching aims when you go into a press conference as a manager. But I thought he was speaking from the heart there. And I don't know if at this stage in the season, that's what we need. Because one of the questions I put to him, Adam, was, is there a danger that if you sort of build these games up to be like cup finals every single time, you're only adding to the tension? And he sort of said, I never used the term cup finals. And it was like, yeah, but you're sitting there telling everybody, I didn't say this, but in my head, I'm thinking, you're telling everybody, bring their lunch, bring their dinner, eat their breakfast, blah, 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 get there early. You're doing that inadvertently. Even if that's not the phrasing that you use, you're still sending a very similar message. And I did feel that one of the main reasons for the frustration after the Bournemouth game was that everybody turned up there really pumped up and then left feeling as flat as a pancake. And that's where the messaging has to align with what you see on the pitch. And on that particular day, it just did it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I've got some drilling in the background. The thing for me as well, I think I completely agree with your point about making every game a cup final. I put a post out about that, in that it's almost the job to bring the temperature down and make it seem like it's just another game. The Bournemouth game, I was in Germany at the weekend, and I was chatting to a Brighton fan. We were out there for work, and he said to me before the game, he was like, yeah, it's Bournemouth at home. It'll be standard 3 points. He was like, I don't know why there's been so much made out of it. There's still 7 games to go. And it did really click with me that actually the noise around the club is so high. And within it, within the fan base, we were all so stressed about that game. Whereas actually, it took a Brighton fan to say to me, you know what, like this is just another game. And I think that's what City would have done. So I don't like these big motivational messages for fans. I think we should have learned from PSG last season that it was a game. You have to go, you have to play it, you have to win it, and you have to do the job on the pitch. The fans will turn up. The fans will turn up for every big game. They always do. You don't need to motivate the fans. They've already paid extortionate amounts of money to be there every week. They are going to be there. But with this latest press conference, when I said about him motivating the players and him using words like fire, the thing that was missing against Bournemouth was any form of fight, fire, intensity. And I wonder if part of his the choice of vocabulary was down to, you guys need to start absorbing this as well. You can't go out and walk through games, because I saw a post from you saying your hot take was about Arsenal will play differently when we win something, and that you don't actually think it's Arteta's instructions. You see him, and I don't know if that was on a pod or it was on Twitter or something. I saw you do it, but anyway, it did kind of stick with me, and it's something I see him on the touchline telling the team to go forward, to move the ball, and we see this delay and we see this kind of sideways pass and that touch to check back. That to me is on-field execution. And I think at times the team is very micromanaged. The team is very heavily coached, but there's definitely a fear factor with the players. And I'm not sure Arteta feels the fear factor, because I think he's someone that just believes in himself so highly. But when it comes to the calmness and stuff like that, I do think maybe the City game is the one that you need to bring that fire and venom and everything to, because the only way we're going to win this game is if we go in and we use our physicality and every player turns up with fight, because they have got better technical players than us. There's no argument around that. They've also got better attackers than us. Again, there's no argument there. But we know where our strengths lie, and it's in our back four. It's in our midfield too. And if we have Eze on the pitch or Odegaard, our midfield suddenly looks a lot stronger. But we have to go out and really use the fire and intensity. That's the way that we're going to get a result at City, not by going and out playing them on the pitch.
Let me just make that point about the sort of the fight being missing. I agree with that. Against Bournemouth, it was absolutely missing. And I thought there was more of that on Wednesday night, which was good to see. You know, you looked at the way that, for example, Zubimendi was getting around the pitch, being aggressive in everything that he did. There was one moment in the first half where I really kind of thought, yeah, that's the Martin Zubimendi that we've been watching for most of the season, where he got on the ball, he looked up, right? He saw there was no pass on. This was in the first half. And he just got his head down and he went on a dribble. And he must have traveled about 20, 30 yards before then trying to play a through ball in behind for Gabriel Martinelli. Now, the pass didn't come off, but I remember at the time looking at that and going, that's okay, because you've done the right thing. You've intended to do the right thing. Not every single pass is going to come off. But aside from missing fight, Adam, I think we've been missing quality in the last few weeks. I think that our passing is off. I think that our execution of basic technical things is just a million miles from where it needs to be. And that worries me. And that has caused me, and maybe this is knee-jerk, maybe this is reactionary. Feel free to shoot me down if you think it is. But that's caused me to sit and look at some of the players that we've got under a microscope and say, I'm not sure that you're good enough. I'm not sure that Noni Madueke can perform at the levels that we need him to over the course of a season. For a few months, fine, it was working. I'm not sure that Martinelli's given enough. I'm not sure that Trossard's given enough. I'm not sure that Viktor Gyökeres is giving enough. And I did a Patreon pod yesterday, which you guys can check out, where I shared my thoughts on Viktor Gyökeres. And, you know, I go into a lot of detail on that episode and explain all the reasons why, and I back it up with all the things that you need to. But I guess top line is actually our attack and our attacking ability is largely impacted with him playing up front, because despite the return of goals, technically, he's nowhere near the level that we need him to be. And you see it all the time. The ball goes forward. It doesn't stick. It doesn't stay there. It doesn't give us the opportunity as a team to close the gap between our midfield and our attack if we're going with that more direct approach. And if we're going with the sort of let's play through approach, which sometimes takes a little bit longer, it feels like we put all this effort into the build up and then the ball goes into the center forward position and it just gets swallowed up. And it doesn't amount to much in terms of efforts at goal, creating chances for other people. It just, it's not working for me, like overall. And I think the goal return is causing a lot of people to, I'm not going to say fail to see that because that's insulting people's intelligence, but it's giving people reason to turn a blind eye to it. And I think we've got a distinct lack of quality at that top end of the pitch right now. And I acknowledge that there are some of those players who are performing way below what we've become accustomed to from them. And so you can argue it's a form point as well. But I don't think that right now, today, we have the quality that we need in the final third. And that is probably what scares me the most about what remains of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think the Gyökeres one, there's something about Gyökeres that I like. It might just be the celebration, but there is something that I really want him to succeed. But there are so many areas of his game that are there's just a clear deficiency. Before we started recording, I talked about Van Persie to you and said about his play dropping deep, but people see duels as a dirty word in football, and I think certain Arsenal fans use it as a stick to beat Arteta with. The reason Arsenal are where they are is because we tightened up on things like duels. We've always, as a club, had very good technical players, but we were soft, and that was something Arteta introduced. You look at Pep's sides. Bernardo Silva repeatedly wins some of the most high duel numbers across Europe. You've Haaland competing, all these players, Aguero, and all of the great Premier League strikers. They could all hold the ball up to various different qualities. Like, not everyone was a Drogba, but Sergio Aguero, small, diminutive, feisty. He could hold the ball up and he could trap it. He could bring others into the game, and he still scored goals. And the thing for me with Gyökeres, that the argument seems to be he's not being fed. Well, actually, there was a stat come out yesterday that Arsenal have fed Gyökeres more than any other striker in the league this year. And that shows that there is clearly a movement issue. There's a control issue whenever he gets through, and he's not making enough of it. We see even against Sporting, the ball came long, he took it in his chest, got a nudge in his back, and he was on the ground. That's not good enough. And anyone that overlooks the hold up role of a striker has never kicked the ball. From you're probably 6 years old and you first start playing football, you're taught to play with your back to goal. It was something I played up front, and I used to hate getting coached on that because I wanted to get the ball to feet, drop in, and turn and play forward. But unfortunately, that is the bare basics of centre forward play. And as you get older, you start to appreciate the coaching that you had when you were 6 and 7 to do the ugly side of the game. So the fact that at 27, Viktor Gyökeres still hasn't developed that is a concern. And I also thought when we signed him that one of the first things that would happen in training would be Gabriel smashed him in the back. And suddenly he started to tighten up those areas because he would be training with Saliba and Gabriel. We're in April, and those areas are still a concern. The issue as well is, again, I thought playing against Sporting, the centre backs they're both good centre backs, not truly elite centre backs. I thought he might do better in that game. But if anything, the Sporting game on Wednesday night was one of his worst performances in an Arsenal shirt. And he had a decent level of involvement, but I thought he was just absolutely abysmal in that game. I would have hooked him after half an hour. And I'm not someone that reacts like that. I tend to think a player can play his way into a game, or you can find a solution within it to get that player more involved. On this occasion, I looked at it, and it was a few minutes in when Eze played him in. I don't know whether he was trying to control it or pass it, and he ended up just giving it diagonally straight to a Sporting player, nowhere near any Arsenal players. Then there's the flick round the corner from Eze, beautiful touch, who then continues to travel towards the box, and Gyökeres just misplaces his pass. That was Giroud's bread and butter. The Jack Wilshere goal against Norwich, that was a similar situation where he just has the ball to knock down. It's these basics that we're not seeing. And yes, he scored 18 goals, But Jury was hitting those numbers and we were tearing him apart. And he was also delivering world-class hold-up play. His duels were phenomenal. His link-up was very good. He just wasn't a clinical finisher, but he was doing a lot of other good work, and we said it wasn't good enough. So it feels like there's certain fans that will overlook all of that side of the game to try and blame Arteta for Gyökeres' deficiencies. And as I said, I really want him to do well, but we're nearly a season in and it's not improving. And he's a reason why, when you say about the quality in the final third, him not being able to bring players into the game, that is causing part of the issue.
Yeah, and I don't want to stress that he's not the only one.
Oh,
I
absolutely
don't
not.
think Madueke at the moment is not doing it. Martinelli's not doing it. When Trossard plays, he's not doing it. It says a lot that at this moment in time, sort of we're turning to Max Dowman ahead of a lot of other players. I mean, earlier in the season, you'd have seen Leandro Trossard come on when we took Noni Madueke off, and maybe Martinelli go over to the right hand side, and that wasn't in the thinking. It was Dowman that sort of got the nod, and I think Mikel Arteta maybe acknowledged, and maybe the penny dropped on the day where he looked at that forward line and went, "That's not technical enough." And later on in the game, what you saw, I thought, was Arsenal be able to hold the ball much better. They were able to keep ball, and that just allowed us to get through the tie without it becoming nervy towards the end. I thought that was really, really key. Someone who is technical and someone who I think we both agree is going to be very, very important and is almost the hero with the absent Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard at the moment that we're all looking to in terms of providing that creative spark. It is Eberechi Eze. And for me, there were some lovely touches, lovely turns, lovely passes, a few efforts at goal against Sporting the other night as well. Encouraging signs. He does feel like the guy that we're all looking at right now. It's not the kind of pressure you want to put on a player that's still in his first season at the club, but we're desperate right now, Adam, and he's the only one showing signs.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree about the pressure thing because
Okay.
he's a 68 million pound player signed at 27 years old to deliver in these moments. This isn't a 22-year-old who's adapting. He's hasn't had to move far, so he's still stayed in the same home, moved across London, and those kind of things. So his adaptation to Arsenal has been very, very smooth. He was in Hill End as a kid, so he knows the environment around Arsenal. Arsenal fan as well, and he has delivered in the Premier League for years. Plus, he's just won an FA Cup with Palace and scored in the final. So pressure is something I don't have any problem putting on Ez's shoulders. Uh, I think that's why we bought him. Gyökeres, honestly, I don't know about the pressure with him, but he does seem like someone who can handle pressure. It's more just, and I don't question Gyökeres' mentality at all. It's purely his technical
It's
qualities.
quality,
And
isn't it? Yeah, it's quality.
yeah,
It's not anything else.
and as a finisher, even when you saw against Bournemouth, Gyökeres running through when it was flagged offside, you see how clinical the guy is. It's just the technical side that concerns me. But yeah, when it comes to the pressure, I've no doubts about Eze, and I think he's such a calm individual. He goes out on the pitch and plays at his own pace, and I think that's a bit of what we need. We saw a move the other night. Ball came in. Sporting went with a four-man press, went forward, came into Declan Rice, and he just clipped it over the top straight into Eze, and we started running forward. And when I mentioned some of the things that I saw, the training ground exercises against Sporting, I think that might have been why Arteta was so happy after that game, because I think certain things we saw the double pivot change. Zubimendi had a much better game. The way we moved that ball, the way Eze found himself in the central hole and being able to move forward. Again, him getting shots off, him playing Gyökeres, and yes, things weren't coming from them, but if you're a coach, you're looking at the build up and the final action. If you're getting there, that will come. And so when it comes to using Eze, it's about how do we get the ball to him. The other thing that I think that we have to highlight is we've just talked about a lack of quality. One of the things with that, I think, is a lack of technical quality. It's you mentioned our passing. That all comes down to the technical side of the game. We've got a lot of runners, we've got a lot of vertical players, but to get the best out of those players, you need technicians that can thread the ball. You need that build up. Right now, our fullbacks, you look at the right hand side, we have Mascara playing. he looked like a centre back playing fullback. And whilst he did okay defensively, on the ball, I thought he looked a bit lost for large periods of that game, and he offered nothing going forward. So Madueke has him behind him. If we have Timber back for Sunday, which still seems to have a chance, we have a player that solves that a big part of that problem very, very quickly. The other one is Calafiori. I thought Nkapie was good, but he was good at being front-footed, aggressive, vertical, and then being a defender. Calafiori, by contrast, is good at being a technical build-up player and really causing havoc, breaking the lines, giving passes around the corner, Travellas, you name it, he's got it all in his locker. Those fullbacks are a huge part of our build-up. And then the other thing is that front three simply doesn't work. So having Martinelli, Gyökeres, and Madueke, it's three players that aren't great at ball retention. I think of the three, Martinelli's probably the best at holding the ball. The issue is Martinelli's brain doesn't work a lot of the time. And rather than just giving it, he takes 6-7 touches and then pops it 5 yards backward. So this is where I think the team selection really matters. And I think the team that we come out with is very, very critical. And that means no Havertz in midfield, no Gyokeres, Martinelli and Madueke up front together, and no kind of non-technical fullback on the pitch.
I just on Gyokeres really, really quickly, because this is relevant to the team selection, and we'll start looking ahead to that massive game against Manchester City at the weekend in a moment. But it's not that I'm dismissing Viktor Gyökeres, by the way. I think we've talked a lot about starters and finishers, haven't we, this season? Why can't he be a finisher? Why can't he be the guy that when the game is that little bit more stretched, because he enjoys running in behind, why can't he be the player that we use then? Why is there this insistence on him starting every single game? And the skill set we require when we're faced with a low block in an even game at that point is not the skill set he possesses.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree on Gyökeres on that point. We have talked all season about finishers, and if anything, he is the player most aligned to being a finisher. One of the things that I really do think, and whilst I see full squad value, I think the squad that you start with is still really important. So yes, you can go out and do a contain mission for the first 60 minutes or whatever. But if you are unable to control the ball for the first 60 minutes, it becomes very difficult to start being able to trap that ball as the game goes on. I think when the technical level of game is almost set at the start, whereas the physical side can come into a game as it goes on, as the opposition tire, as the fitter side gets stronger. So with Gyökeres, I think when games become more stretched, his qualities really come out. You look at the Sunderland game earlier in the season, we won 3-0. He comes off the bench and scores 2. That was a prime example of him being able to really kind of score goals in big moments from the bench. And these things, I think the Leeds game as well, he might have come off the bench too, but these things, they have an impact. And Gyökeres is a player who he's got exactly what you said. He likes running in behind. He's reasonably quick. And when the game's stretched, he will be able to make those runs and get in behind and give you something different. Whereas when the game's stretched, I think Havertz gives you more control, but I don't think he's the player that can really take full advantage of a game being stretched. And having Havertz in centre forward for me from the start and bringing the wingers into the game, that's a better use of him. And then, especially in a game like City, but having Gyokeres then come on maybe 70 minutes, that's when he really comes into his strength. So I hope to see more of that, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And, I feel like we've done a lot more Gyökeres talk than I was kind of intending, but it's just because I guess for me, like, I do think he's got deficiencies. I do think there are parts of his game that are not at the level required for an elite side. And I do think that whatever happens, whether he helps fire us to a Premier League title or Champions League or not, because ultimately, listen, he's Arsenal's top goal scorer by quite some distance. And if we do enjoy success this season, he'd have played a major part in that. And nobody is trying to downplay that. But I'm just at a point where I think regardless of what happens in the summer, we need to think a bit about how we play, how he's involved, what his role looks like, because I think there are certain players in world football that you bring in and you go, wow, he's incredible. That warrants and that justifies me changing my game model to get the best out of that player. I don't see Viktor Gyökeres as one of those. Therefore, I think the question is, and the thought process needs to be, okay, so our game model shouldn't be based necessarily around Victor, but in what game states and in what scenarios can we really play on Victor's strengths and get the best out of him? And I think you need to use him accordingly. So that's kind of where I'm at going into the summer with Gyokeres, regardless of what happens between now and the end of the season. But the other point is, where the hell would we be without him goals-wise this season? Because he has scored a good amount of goals. So it's a fine balance to kind of tread when we're talking about him, because I don't want it to sound like we're slating him, but I do think that we are seeing a knock-on effect on our attacking performances, not because he's a bad player, not because he's a bad guy, but because the skill set that he possesses, for me, is just not quite compatible with everything else that we have. And that's where the issue is. It's a compatibility issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as I said, there's a player in there that there's things I like. I really want him to do well. I think there is something quite likable about him as well. And I want every player who pulls on an Arsenal shirt to perform. But I completely agree with the points you've made about compatibility. I also think if you have a Alexis Sanchez type player, you play to them. I don't think Gyökeres is that player. And I also think that Saka missing so much of the season, and also I think playing through stuff and not being fully fit for a lot of the season has had an impact on our attacking creative play. And then you add Odegaard to the list. He's been a huge miss. I think he started 13 games this season, which is insane. And that's our club captain, our most creative player. And you're taking him and Saka out of the team at once. Not only are they our creators, they're also our control players as well. So there's been things that have happened. But as I said to you before we started recording, the fact that we keep getting these injuries, that also concerns me, because we did beef up the squad for this purpose. And it looks like City have their best players available for the run-in. We are again in a position where we've got 4 or 5 that are all very much doubts, and we don't know the status of any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn our attention to the big game coming up on Sunday. Arsenal, of course, travel to the Etihad. Let's try and pick a team between us, Adam, for this one. This is always difficult. I'm going to say that at the time of recording, and we're recording this really, really early on Friday, we haven't heard from Mikel Arteta yet, but I suspect we won't have much from him in terms of updates, concrete ones anyway. So I guess we can assume that Saka, Odegaard, and Timber are not available to start the game, and Calafiori, is that? I mean, do you think there's any hope, first of all, of any of those guys becoming available to play from the start? Because I can't see it. I just can't see it.
I'm hoping Timber.
Okay.
I think you can start with Calafiori and get away with it, or with Nkapie and be fine.
Yeah.
If Timber's there. I saw an interview with Timber where he said he hoped to be back. And that's a lot of what I'm placing my hopes on, is him saying that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they're going to be ready, because it's one thing being fit, like as in passable to start, and it's another thing being ready to come into a game like that, of all games. But then the flip side of that is, even if they're at 70-75%, it's the morale boost that it gives you, it's the quality increase that it provides. So I kind of get it. But let's try and pick this team.
The other thing I would say is, maybe the fact Ben White didn't play against Sporting is Arteta protecting him in case he needs him. But then Ben White got roasted in the cup final. So
yeah, I was looking at Mosquera the other night, and I thought, defensively, you're okay. I'm happy with you at right back defensively, but offensively, he just looks so uncomfortable, doesn't he, when he's galloping up the pitch trying to get involved in build-up play. It just doesn't look right. But look, let's try and pick this team. Look, I think the goalkeeper, easy, right? David Raya, no doubts about it. Although we've seen a few moments from David Raya in the last couple of games that have stressed me out. Is it the case, Adam, that we've seen those types of things really and truly all season, in terms of us trying things and sometimes them not coming off? But at this time in the campaign of all times, it feels like every little mistake is really kind of highlighted and turned into a bigger deal.
I've kind of felt that all season, to be honest. I don't think there's been a relaxing point at all.
No.
So yeah, he against Sporting, I thought he was quite poor by his standards. Bournemouth again, he had no option to go long to, and that was an issue. So, but I trust David Raya, and I think you look at the number of mistakes he's made all season, and they're very, very low. So I have no concerns about him overall.
At right back then, so if you think Timber's going to be available, that would be great. But if he's not, because if he is, there's not even a discussion to be had here. If he's available, he plays. But if he's not, who are you going with at right back?
I'm going Ben White, just because he was rested midweek, and as much as White is someone who physically looks below the level we were accustomed to, he is still a very good ball progressor, and he's someone that he can look after the ball as well. Whereas with Mascara, he gives you the physical side, he gives you the defensive acumen, but he doesn't give you anything in possession the way a fullback would. As a centre back, he's fine, but as a fullback, it requires a different level of technicality.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, centre backs, easy, right? As long as they're fit, as long as they're available. Saliba and Gabriel, there's no debate about that whatsoever. At left back, based on the options we have available, Piero Hincapié feels like the better choice for me.
He is the one. I mean, I'm praying for Calafiori, but Hincapié is the one most likely, and also the one that I do trust in there. So
it's him. It's him. Moving into the midfield then. How are you setting up the midfield?
I think this depends on who's fit. If Odegaard's fit, I'm starting him.
Okay.
If he's not fit, Eze.
Okay. Do you think Odegaard could be fit enough to start though? This is the thing. Like, having these players back would be great, but I guess what you're saying and sort of suggesting that he could start, or even with Timber, is there an idea in your mind, Adam, that maybe these guys are closer than we've thought and that they're being held back a little bit? Because I think at this desperate point in the season, I don't think that's the case anymore. I would have agreed with that pre the cup final. I would have felt that was the case maybe around that point in the season. But at this stage where we're seeing others run through brick walls to be available, like, unless I'm saying that these guys could play and they're not, then I think, to think that they're closer is, I don't know, I think that's maybe optimism more than anything else.
I think they're all close. I don't think anyone's being held back. I think with Odegaard, he said in the program notes he took a knock to his knee, and that was basically what happened. So with him, I don't think it's so much of a fitness issue. Sorry, so much of a fitness issue, but more of it's an impact thing that he's got at the minute, where he is fit, but this knee keeps flaring up. So whereas if it was more muscular, then I'd be like, you need to train the muscle, you need to make sure you're sprinting, all of those things. And I'm only going on what Odegaard's written in his program notes, as opposed to my Calafiori hopes, which I'll be honest are pure delusion, because I don't know what's wrong with him. That's my concern about Calafiori. There's been a couple of injuries this season where we haven't known what it is. Even this one, we don't know what the injury is. We don't know what the injury that kept him out for a month was either. And because we heard he was unwell, suddenly it was a month out. With Timber, he said through the week that it was a groin injury, but again, that's the first we've really heard what Timber's injury was. So again, I'm going on what Timber said. Saka and Calafiori are the two that I'm just in just blind optimism with. But Saka being an Achilles, I've seen managers talk about that injury before. I remember Arsene Wenger talking about it before. I think Henry had an Achilles problem at one point, and he had said something along the lines of, it's a strange injury, because it can be 2 days or it can be a month. You really don't know it. It's all down to how it kind of continues to flare up. And I've read that if they get this wrong with Saka, he could miss the rest of the season. So with him, I think there's an element of holding him back, just because, yes, this running is very important, but they also have to look at if he misses one game versus if he misses the next 6 or 7, and 2 of those games are Champions League semi-finals. Um, so yeah, that's a long way of answering your question. It's a mixture of delusion and hope.
In terms of the forward line, because I think we can agree on the midfield then. If Odegaard's not fit enough to start, then he doesn't, and it will be Rice, Zubimendi, and Eza. If Odegaard's fit, you say that he starts. Does he start in place of Eza then? Is that what you're doing?
So I would start Eza left and
Okay.
Odegaard in midfield. Either way, Eza for me is our crown piece attacker in this game. And he is the player that I'm looking to win this for us. So yeah, if Odegaard's fit, I would play him, because I think our biggest issue, which we've both discussed, is our technical control of the game. I thought that was a huge gulf between the two sides at Wembley, and having them both on the pitch would be massive. The other thing, I don't know, you'll have seen it probably more than anyone. You've got a better view because you're in the gantry. Is the press recently? The aggression of our press has been severely reduced, and I think Odegaard on the pitch is a player that drives that. So it wouldn't just be about technical quality. I think Odegaard, the minute he steps on the pitch, he makes everyone step up another level. The focus increases, and there's a mixture of everything with why I would want him on the pitch.
I think when Odegaard plays, the press is more orchestrated.
Yeah.
I would argue that when Madueke, Gyokeres, and Martinelli play as a 3, it's not about them not running hard enough. I think they do. And I think they do get after the ball and they do chase it. But there's no orchestration. There's no organization really to that press when Odegaard's not there. And that makes it less effective, because it's not always about running harder. Sometimes it's about running smarter. Have you got an idea of the channels that they want to play the ball through? Are you going to then prioritize those in the way that you approach the ball, the angles that you approach it from, to make those passes more difficult? And I think Odegaard's got the ability to retain that kind of tactical information going into a game, and then has the composure to then make sure that that's carried out on the pitch. Whereas I'm not sure, when we're talking about a lack of technical level in our forward line, generally speaking, I'm not calling them silly or sort of downplaying their intelligence, but I don't think you get that same level of translation from maybe what's been seen in the clips before a game, the video analysis, to it actually happening on the pitch when you don't have a Martin Odegaard out there. What would your front line look like then? So taking into consideration that if Odegaard plays, you'd put Eze on the left, assuming he's not for a minute, because at the time of recording, we don't have any indication that he will. What are you going with up front?
Yeah, assuming it's this team behind, I'm going with Havertz in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's something I think we just have to do. And then Trossard on the left. I think Trossard, and this is just what my gut is telling me rather than being based on anything, I think Trossard's been playing through something recently. And I think it shows in his minutes and some of his actions. But I thought when he came on against Sporting, he finally looked a bit springier. And that's the first time in a few weeks I've seen him. He obviously pulled out of Belgium duty during the break. And I do think, we talked about it, there was this assumption that Arsenal were just pulling players out. Actually, a lot of those players have proven to be injured. And we've had a big knock-on effect post-international break where our results have been very, very poor. So what is it? 2 defeats and a draw and 1 win. So yeah, a very poor post-break. So I think Trossard is getting back. He does give us a level of control. And then on the right-hand side, I would be going with the chaos in Madueke, because I think what we've got around him is a team that can handle the ball and then needs a bit of chaos and a bit of verticality in the team. But if you don't have that that play around him, suddenly Madueke just looks erratic.
Yeah. So I would go with something slightly different, and I'm going to put yours on the graphic because yours is the more likely choice and the choice that I think most people would agree with. I'm going to go with something a little bit different on the right-hand side. I know I've been a critic of his quite a bit in recent weeks, but I would put Martinelli on the right in this game, and I'll explain why. First of all, I'm massively concerned about Ben White at right back. Massively concerned. He doesn't look anything like the Ben White that we've seen over the years. He doesn't look as defensively secure. I don't feel he's got the pace anymore. I think there's problems there. Okay, that position really, really worries me. Having Martinelli on the right-hand side gives me a confidence that there'll be sufficient support from the wide player to try and help mask those problems that I expect with Ben White, number one. Number two, though, when I look at that forward line, I think it lacks raw pace. And I think that with the technical stability around Martinelli, a bit like what you were saying with Madueke, having Havertz that can flick it round the corner or hold it up so that he can make those bursts and get close to him. And then having Trossard on the left, who is a much more technically secure player, and Eze in there, maybe Odegaard if he's fit as well. I feel like Martinelli, that would be the first time in a while we'd be kind of platforming him to play his best game. And I kind of like Martinelli when he's on the right, because when he gets to the byline, there isn't really a choice to make. It isn't about decision making. And when you take the decision making away, just cut it back, whip it into the box. If you want to have a shot from an angle, have a shot. But I feel like that could work in this particular game. And I think if you go with Martinelli there with everything else that we've picked, I think you get that right balance between playing on our strengths, which is our running power, our physicality. Although that stuff looks like it's waned a little bit of late, I think he's one of the players that would still bring that energy. He doesn't have to play the whole game, by the way. But I think also when you're playing a high line, like Manchester City will, because they're going to squeeze up and try and press us, I think knowing that there's someone with frightening pace that could be sent over the top of your defense, I think that would petrify them. And I know that Pep Guardiola's got a bit of a complex about Gabriel Martinelli. I know Jurgen Klopp had it as well in the past, where they constantly spoke about him because they knew, and I get that he was in better form at that point and he was at a different time in his career. But that's what I would go with there. And I know it's outside of the box. I know it's left field and not everyone's going to agree with it. But I think your selection is certainly the most likely. So let me just read that out for those that are listening on audio. Raya in goal, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Nkapie, Eze, Rice, and Zubi in the middle, with Trossard left, Havertz up front. We both agree that Viktor Gyökeres probably shouldn't start this game, and then Madueke on the right. How do you think it's going to go, Adam? Let's wrap up with a kind of a prediction of how this game's going to play out. Very, very difficult to do, I know, but what's your gut telling you at this point, Friday morning? How do you think it's going to pan out?
I think it's a game that we have to come out and show fight. That's what it all comes down to, is how much do you want this? That for me is the thing that supersedes everything. It's the most basic thing, and it's one of those things that you look back to the Wiltord goal at Old Trafford. These moments, they just come down to how much you want it, how much energy and fight you have. So what are you thinking?
I feel like I think we're going to bring the fire in terms of effort. There's been a few times where we've been a bit flat and a bit lackluster, but I don't think that if you're going to sit here and be critical of this team, the place you start is commitment. I just don't think that's where you start with this team. I think there are other deficiencies, other problems, other things that concern me for sure. But I've always felt like this Arsenal team are going to give you their absolute most. It's never down to a lack of effort. And what I just want to see us do is find that right balance between, being our solid selves and sort of understanding that a draw actually is a pretty good result for us. And it's become an even better result in theory over the last few weeks, because in the past you might have gone, well, we're leading, and even though we've had our lead eaten into by Bournemouth, which would suggest the opposite, really, that had that lead still been intact, actually drawing would be an even better result. I just think what you've got to look at now is the form of the two teams, the player availability, who's got the momentum. All of that is with City right now. So if you can get through this unscathed, I think that's massive, and it will bring not so much a sense of we've done it. We can go on and really kind of finish this off. But it'll bring a sense of calm, I think. The fact that we haven't gone there and been beaten, rolled over, turned over, and in a place now where we're really having to look over our shoulders. So for me, it's about just getting through this challenge. And if we do, I think we'll find that extra bit from somewhere to make sure that we don't slip up in the games coming up, or that we get sufficient points, that we keep going maybe until City drop points somewhere, and then we kind of reestablish a bit more control. But I think we've got to find that balance between being ourselves, but also at the same time, you know, you can't be crushed at a place like this. And we've been there before, where everything that you preach and practice goes completely out the window, and you just end up backs against the wall, and it's survival. We got to believe that we're better than that, and that we can do more than just survive, because against a team like City, if you don't play some football, eventually they will wear you down. So this thing of going there and sitting and soaking up, you can get away with that at most grounds with the players that we've got. You probably still don't get away with that here, just because of how good they are. And that's why throughout the season, Adam, just very quickly, sorry, throughout the season, when people have said it's over, it's over, it's over, I've never subscribed to that. I've never bought into that, because we all knew that if this City team clicked, they would be capable of going on a really good run. And I would be shocked if they dropped many points between now and the end of the season, which kind of emphasizes that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I would say is, along with what I said about coming out with the fire, as you said, commitment hasn't been an issue all season, but this is a game where you have to dig deep and find that extra level. Last year when we played City at the Emirates, we had played, I think, 12 games in 30 days, something crazy like that. We went out and we found the energy. We looked exhausted before that game, and we came out and we give every bit of fight. I think the players are good at utilizing some of the media narratives, the hatred of City going into these games. But there were a couple of things from the cup final that stand out. One is the sorry,
all good. It's all good.
this works. Go on. One is the fact that City actually didn't have many shots in the cup final. Kepa didn't make any saves in that game, and we missed a massive chance at the start of the game. People keep talking to me about volume, but that completely excuses players of missing chances. Taking chances is part of the game, and at times in these games, you might get 1-2 chances, and you have to take them, and that's what will be key for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lots to play for. Massive, massive game coming up. Lots of interesting discussions. We've talked about the forward line, the midfield balance. We've talked about how we think this one will go. We've tried to pick a team based on the very little we have to go by in terms of team news and understanding of the fitness of some key players. But one thing is for sure is that this game is absolutely huge. And it could really set the tone for what remains of Arsenal's season, both in a good way and in a bad way. And I think we've got to be, look, I'm not making, it's going to sound like I'm making excuses before we've even played. If we lose the game, it doesn't mean the title race is over. And we're all going to do the post-mortem bit if we lose, of course. And that's going to be difficult, and it's going to be painful, and there's going to be a lot of emotion flying around because people will feel like it's gotten away from us. But I think we have to find a level of composure, and we have to find a balance and a level of calm between now and the end of the season, regardless of what happens on Sunday. Because if we don't, we're potentially throwing away an amazing opportunity that we've worked for years to get to. And I just think that some of the stuff that we are going to hear in the event of a defeat is all going to be valid and relevant. I'm not telling people how to think or how to feel, but I think we've got to find a way of just parking it for now. And those conversations can take place in the summer, because if you create this toxic cloud of negativity over Arsenal at a time where they would still very much be in the thick of a title race and very much in with a hope of winning the Champions League, you're not helping. You're not helping the situation. So anyway, Adam, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate your time. As always, know what you've got coming up, what you're up to, and where they can find you.
Yeah, I've been fairly quiet recently on YouTube. My main stuff's been on X, just waffling away as usual. So Adam Keys _ on there. I should be back on YouTube after the City game. So at Arsenal Therapy, we've collabed on this. You can find me there. And you can find me on Instagram at _ Adam Keys _. So yeah, thanks for watching. Keep coming back. Cheers, guys.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review, all of that wonderful stuff. And make sure you get over and subscribe to Adam's channel too. Catch you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, Symeou time. Come on, you gunners.